our regular members, and all our visitors. We want to welcome you to this, our Parents' Day celebration, where we they must be valued, loved, and cared for. Let us now stand and read together our Bible reading, taken from Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 to 4. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 to 4, and we will all read together. Have you found it? You can start. Has all have it? Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, which is first commandment promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Okay. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading of his most holy word. Our opening hymn is number 652. Number 652. What else here? our dear sister Jennifer Boyce will now give us the opening prayer.
Let us kneel for prayer. Almighty and everlasting Father, we are indeed thankful to be alive this morning, to be in your presence. We give you the thanks, the praise, and the honor for what you have done for us, taking us out of darkness and bringing us into your marvelous light. We pray for all those who are present here this morning, the young ones, the older ones, and we pray, dear Father, that whoever have come from the community, that they will receive a blessing here this morning. We ask you, Lord, that we will continue to trust you where we cannot trace you, and that our faith will grow from being here today. Continue to be with all the proceedings this morning, and may all your name be uplifted and blessed by all present here today. In Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen.
Welcome to the Museum of Honor. Today, we are going to take an interesting tour so that you will find out about each one of the characters. You may wonder, what do these people have in common, and why are they in this museum? Well, it is because they have earned their position here for having honored their parents, according to the 5th commandment, which says, honor thy father and mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. We will now pause for our skip.
What an interesting museum. I believe we are going to learn today how to honor our parents, according to the commandment, by finding out about the lives of these people. Look, this is King Jehoshaphat. He was the 6th king of the house of David, and the 4th in the kingdom of Judah. It says in his biography that he honored his father, King Asa, whose heart was right with the Lord all the days of his life. Asa was the king who did not allow his mother to be queen because she had made an idol of Asherah.
That is correct. My father did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and decided to follow in his footsteps. However, I went a step further because he did not root out the high places of the idolatry in Israel. In his latter days, he made a pact with the king of Assyria, and God was angry with him for that. So I decided that I would better his legacy and do what he could not do. And I am thankful for what the path he showed me.
The next person is very special. The description says that he was a 3rd son of Aaron. His older brothers, Nadab and Abihu, offered strange fire and died in the wilderness. This was a dishonor to their father. This is a priest, Eleazar. He exercised the priesthood in the presence of his father. And the Bible says that Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, was to be chief over the leaders of the Levites, with oversight of those who kept charge of the sanctuary. And this is found in Numbers chapter 3, verses 32. What a relief that must have been for Aaron the priest.
Thank you for including Eliezer in this museum. As you see, his name makes reference to his father, and it was an honor for him when positive mention was made of Eliezer. His father was very affected by what Eliezer's brothers did, and because they did not leave any descendants. In our culture, this is like disappearing. His decision was to do the right thing for God and to see his father's look of approval and relief.
How interesting. Look at the next character. I never imagined that he could be in this museum. Let's listen to what he has to say.
My name is Gideon, son of Joash. You must be surprised to see me in this museum, because at the Lord's command, I took a bull from my father's herd, tore down his altar of Baal, and cut down the image of Asherah, leading the men in my city to want to take my life. As you know, my father prevented my death with wise words that earned me the nickname Jerubbaal. He was not my best example, because parents should not serve gods other than the Lord. But as you can see, I did not fail to give him respect by doing what God commanded. In time, he was able to see that his younger son became the instrument of liberate Israel from Midian.
A very good lesson. To human eyes, it would seem that Gideon's father should not have been honored, but God's command does not show favoritism. Who is this woman?
Hello, I am in this museum because I was the oldest daughter of Zelophehad. You will remember that we were 5 daughters, and our father died in the wilderness because of his sin. We took our cause to Moses, and he consulted God about giving us our father's land, and seeing that his name might not be erased from the people. Given that he did not have any sons. From this moment, not only did we keep our father's name, but God gave an ordinance for similar cases that could arise in the future.
You were very brave women and were able to maintain your father's name. There is still one section of the museum that is very special, but we are going to visit it after we hear the mission story and New Horizon reading for today.
Good morning, Sabbath School. Happy Sabbath. The title of the mission story this morning is On Fire for Jesus. On Fire for Jesus. Now, Miguel is 69 and bursting with energy. Let me read that again. Miguel is 69 and bursting with energy. A few years ago, Miguel readily accepted an invitation from a friend, Yaldino Fernandez, or we're going to call him Dino in this story. He accepted this invitation from Dino to lead Bible studies in Dino's home in the impoverished La Teja district of Uruguay's capital, Montevideo. In addition to those Bible studies, Miguel traveled with Dino to various people's homes for more Bible studies in the district, a place where the Seventh-day Adventist Church had no church building. After a year, the Bible study participants were invited to a Daniel and Revelation evangelistic series. 16 people were baptized. Following the meetings, we decided to plant a church, Miguel said. Miguel, several other church members, and the 16 members rented a house and worshiped there every Sabbath. Church attendance grew as the Adventists reached out to the neighborhood with food and clothing. The rented space grew cramped, and church members looked for ways to expand the church building and their impact on the community. The problem was solved when Adventists around the world helped La Teja Seventh-day Adventist Church purchase its own building and a lifestyle center through a 13th Sabbath offering in 2016. Miguel is thrilled about the new opportunities now available to the church. Our plan is to serve people in the neighborhood, including the homeless, he said in an interview in the church's kitchen, where healthy cooking classes are held. Many impoverished people live around here. This wasn't Miguel's first time to win souls for Christ, however. Earlier, he had a group of church members from El Prado Seventh-day Adventist Church. He and a group, of church members from El Prado Seventh-day Adventist Church traveled regularly to a squatter settlement comprised largely of crude cardboard shelters in a dangerous part of Montevideo. 5 of us gave 25 Bible studies every Sabbath, Miguel said. We also brought food. We tried to reach the people. Wait, Mike, right. 5 of us gave 25 Bible studies every Sabbath, Miguel said. We also bought food. We tried to reach the people and provide for their needs. Church members provided ongoing assistance to 47 adults and 90 children. They also constructed a house where people could find shelter from rising flood water during heavy rain. People from the settlement started coming to church. Some arrived by horse and cart. As a result of the work, we had 21 baptisms. Miguel worked 27 years with the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, also known as ADRA, in Uruguay. And one of his fondest memories is of Walter, a homeless man with no legs and diabetes, who showed up at ADRA Center in Montevideo. Walter had no food and no place to go, and Miguel became acquainted with him while cooking food at the center. He learned that Walter had a colorful past and at one time had been a celebrity for writing satirical songs to perform at Uruguayan Carnival, which is a major annual festival celebrated in Uruguay in January and February. Miguel spoke about what Jesus meant in his life, and Walter showed interest. One day after lunch, Walter asked, "Why don't you teach me about the Bible?" The two men went to a leafy park and studied the Bible together under the warm Uruguayan sun. He was smart and he learned quickly, Miguel said. He was willing to change and he had the desire to change. He quit smoking and changed all his bad habits. At the ADRA Center, he received healthy vegetarian food and started to like soy meat. One day, as Miguel was preparing a Sabbath sermon, Walter asked, "What are you going to preach about?" Miguel explained the inspiration for the sermon came from a picture posted on his refrigerator door. The picture showed a child fishing food from the garbage and posed the question, "What are you complaining about?" Opening his Bible, Miguel read Luke 9:13, where Jesus told his disciples, "You give them something to eat." Jesus said these words shortly before the miracle of multiplying 5 loaves and 2 fish. Miguel returned to his cooking, and Walter busily wrote on a piece of paper. After a while, Walter finished and handed the paper to Miguel. "If this is useful, I give this to you to use in the sermon." Now Miguel read Walter's words during the sermon. The church members were deeply moved and several wept. Walter had written from the perspective of Jesus as if Jesus were writing to people. The message said, "You are complaining, but look, all around you live people who are homeless, without food and without clothing. You have a place to rest, food to eat, and clothing to wear." Walter then wrote about himself. "Look at what I am now," he said. "I used to have friends who drank with me, danced with me, and came to me because I was famous. But now they come to me to complain about their problems, and I say, 'What are you complaining about? Look at me. I have no legs and diabetes.'" Several months later, Walter gave his heart to Jesus. As he came out of the baptismal waters, he shouted loudly, "Thank you, Jesus." Miguel still hears Walter's triumphant shout today. A month and a half after the baptism, though, Walter passed away. Miguel said, "I hope to see him again when our Heavenly Father comes to take us home. I hope to reunite with him, with all God's people who are faithful. I want to see them all in heaven." Thank you for your 2016-13 Sabbath offering that helped Latagia Seventh-day Adventist Church acquire its own building and community center. Thank you for winning souls for Jesus by teaming up with missionaries like Miguel. Thank you.
Good morning, church. The New Horizon reading this morning is coming in the form of a story, and it focuses on the theme of honoring your father and your mother. The story is told of 2 sons of a widow who were making plans for the future. One of them wrote on a paper, "I will be famous. I will travel around the world. I will have a wife and children. I will lack nothing." The other son wrote, "I will be a doctor. I will have a wife and children. I will care for my mother, since my brother will be traveling around the world. Neither she nor I will lack anything." This story is a reality that our world is living at the present time. Many children make plans and projects without taking into account the fact that God has promised them long life and blessings so that they can take care of and protect their parents, since they will no longer have the strength or energy of youth to provide for or care for themselves. The care goes beyond material things. Many parents have the resources for their sustenance, but need their children's support to do activities or manage certain things that are no longer possible for them to do. Other parents find themselves in lonely situations, in addition to feeling that they are no longer useful. However, in the worst cases, many parents suffer the punishment and distancing of their children, who blame them for errors they made in the past and deny them forgiveness, and as a result, the love and care they need. God made provision in the 5th commandment for the cycle of life to be complete. We are born and need someone to care for and protect us. It is at that time that our parents come into the picture and fulfill those functions. Then we get to the point where the roles are reversed, because we have to care for and protect them, perhaps at the same time we are caring for our own children. God promises to bless those who allow themselves to be channels of blessings for others, especially when those receiving the blessings are their parents. The promise is sure and is given by the one who keeps his creation in order. Thank you.
This section is very special. In this part of the museum are the Rashabites. Let us listen from them about why they are in this museum. Their story is recorded in Jeremiah chapter 35.
We represent the family of the Rechabites. Our father was Jonahab, son of Rechab. God used us as an example of obedience to our parents when we were to go to the temple and offer wine to drink. We refused to do this because neither we nor our sons or daughters drank wine because of our father's command. God asked the prophet Jeremiah to speak to the children of Israel, saying that he expected obedience from the people just as we were obedient to our father.
What a fascinating story. Let's hope that God feels just as proud of us for being obedient to the good advice and principles of our elders. A preacher said, parents should be like Jairus, take Jesus to their homes to save their children. That is the best legacy that a parent can give. In the case of children, honor and obedience is the best gift they can give. God chose our parents, and this means that it is part of the plan he has in our lives. We will now have lesson study as a whole.
Well, good morning, everyone. Pleasant Sabbath to all of you. Okay. Before we get into our lesson study, let us bow our heads for a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for your word. We thank you that we can place our confidence in your holy word day by day, moment by moment. We thank you that thy word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. Continue to bless us as we go through the remainder of this service. May your Holy Spirit come amongst us for Christ's sake. Amen. For those of our visiting friends in our midst, every Sabbath we normally have a session running from 10 to 10:30 where we are the church at study. And so this is the opportunity for each and every one of us to participate in this effort. Now this week, which is week 6 of the second quarter, we are studying the lesson, the Royal Love Song. The Royal Love Song. During the week, we would have looked at various topics. We would have looked at the indivisible life, the loves of the love song, a love in knowledge, love at the right time, safeguarding the Creator's gift. Now, this is a song about human love, written in the style of the idle poetry, and that is IDYLL, which looks at a pastoral theme. The song depicts the Edenic ideal for sexual love even after the fall. It reminds human beings that sexuality is a gift created by God to enjoy in a heterosexual and monogamous way. God's covenant, which orders sexual purity, provides the accurate frame, that is marriage, within which his people may appropriately experience the gift of sexual intimacy. Marriage is a blessing of God, founded on loyalty and commitment, but it is conformed by two individuals with a sinful nature. So a couple must invite the Lord as part of their matrimonial life if they want to fulfill the divine purpose for this institution. Then good conjugal relationships are not a coincidence, but the consequence of a hard fight against the proud human nature influenced by the Holy Spirit in the heart of men and women. Now, as I looked through the lesson for this week, there were some things that popped into my mind. It talks about the creator of the universe is the originator of marriage. Marriage is honorable. Marriage is a blessing. I wonder, what would have come to mind while you would have gone through the lesson, Sister Cloven?
Well, as we said, we are looking at the Royal Love Song. And as we understood, this is a relationship here by Solomon and his courtship, his marriage, and his relationship with his wife or his lady Shulamite. And we see as we look at the lesson study, the first thing it says is to set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. For love is as strong as death, jealousy as cruel as the grave. Its flames are flames of fire and most vehement flames. So when we think about a seal, we think about a commitment or ownership. So Solomon is here declaring that, or Shulamite, to set me as a seal upon your heart. So in marriage, or in a relationship, you have that commitment that will lead to marriage. And that is the first thing that we recognize in this study today. And even as we look, when we bind the two together, we can see our relationship with God as well, and a commitment as we come out in marriage. But we will go into that deeper as we go further into the lesson study. So,
for me, the right. I think I would probably start with a question, because I was wondering if the Book of Solomon really has any relevance or any connection to salvation, and how we perform our sexual duties and so on. Are they important for Christians? I mean, what happens? Some people say that what happens in the bedroom is bedroom business, and as a Christian, should we be discussing what actually goes on in the bedroom? And that is the question that came into my mind when I read this book of the book of Solomon, because it is not a book that we often read. You seldom hear preachers preaching from this book. It is a very small book, and it deals with some fairly erotic scenes. And if your mind is allowed to wander, then it will wander. And that's why I'm saying that. And maybe you can help me here, those of you who read it. Do you see any need for this book of Solomon telling us about love, about sex, and so on? Do you see that as being important, really, to salvation? I don't know if there's anybody who would like to answer that, having read the lesson this week. Yeah.
Jesus said, search the scriptures, that they testify of him. He didn't exclude this book, so this book is important to salvation.
Okay, say that again.
I said, Jesus said, search the scriptures, that they testify of him. And he did not exclude this book.
Okay.
So this book is important for salvation, in spite of the scenes and however we choose to describe them. They are describing salvation.
Right. So you agree then that what happens in the bedroom is the business of God?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everywhere.
Okay. So somebody.
God is interested in all aspects of us. He has created us, and we are sexual beings. And as a result, that means he wants us to be healthy and happy in that area of our lives. Now, what happens in a person's specific bedroom is not our business. But certainly how we express ourselves and how we show each other love in a sexual way is important, because it's important to us as individuals, it's important to our families, and then by extension it becomes very important to our societies. So certainly what happens in our bedroom is very important.
Okay.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Now, they tell me that sex is the highest expression of intimacy. It is where two people meet and they give of themselves completely to each other. There is no going beyond that. When you look at the book of Solomon, really, when you analyze it critically, it speaks of the relationship between God and humanity, between Christ and the church. If you go to Song of Solomon chapter 5, and the first verse, it says, his head is of most fine gold, okay? When we go to Daniel, with the image of the man, the first thing we see in that metallic arrangement is the head of fine gold. Very often we apply it merely to the rise and fall of nations or kingdoms, right? But it's the image of the man, and it speaks, in a sense, of man in his original state. Gold represents purity. Man in his pure state, and you see the fall as the metal decrease, in value and in density. So the book of Solomon, when we come to the bedroom issue, sex speaks of intimacy. That's what he speaks to, and that is how God wants us to relate with him. It must be deep. Jesus said, if you know my will, you will ask, and it will be granted unto you. So when we get to that level of intimacy with God, then we will know what he's thinking, and he will know what he's thinking. There is a oneness that is spoken about in Songs of Solomon.
Okay, when we look at Genesis 1, verse 27, Genesis 1:27, it says, so God created man in his own image, and I'm reading from the New King James Version. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. We see here God, in the first week of creation, he would have created man and woman, and he would have told them to replenish the earth, multiply, be fruitful, which would suggest the sexual act. But when we look at Solomon, in especially the chapter which is dealing with the wedding, it is much more than an act of procreation, but an act of pleasure. And so, again, when we look at Genesis chapter 2, and Genesis chapter 2 was given like a review of what God would have done. He put man to sleep. He took a rib from man. He made woman. And when Adam opened his eyes and saw this beautiful, I don't want to say creature, this beautiful woman, he said, look, this is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman. And so we see here God placing in human beings this attraction for one another. Now, the lesson was also telling us that when we look at Genesis 2, verse 7, it talks about God fashioning man and breathing into man the breath of life, and man become a living soul. In Psalm 63, verse 1, David is talking about worshiping the Lord with his whole heart and his own soul. In Psalm 84, verse 2, we also see that it is impossible to separate the body and the body and the spirit. And so when it comes to the human body, the lesson says, including its sexual characteristics, is integral to the whole being. Life is body and spirit. The psalmist gives the whole of himself in worship to God. The total person is to be sanctified, set apart for holy purpose, and God's intended. Now, this also suggests when it comes to marriage, there must be a giving of yourself to your spouse wholly. Could you explain on that?
Yeah, we recognize that in the study, they have some philosophies that speak of dualism, wherein that they see, as Rel just mentioned, the body and the spirit, they separate the two, and they see it as that anything connected to the body is bad, but the spirit is something separate. But we see in the study that they are all one. When God breathed his breath into man, he became a living soul. Body and spirit unite together, and there's no separation. And in marriage, it should be the same way, the giving of your whole self. There should be no separation, sometimes that, and I believe that, even beginning with what Brother Graham's talk, I believe that young children the younger ones in the church coming up should be taught these things, because he asked the question if it is integral for our salvation. And it is, because if we do not know how to respond, or how God responds to us through the marriage, because it's the marriage that helps us to understand God's love for us, because of that closeness, that intimacy. And I began with, in the lesson study, it says, set a seal. He set a seal upon me, showing that God sets his love on us, his favor. So it is with the husband and the wife. He has where he will provide, and God is the provider. He is the protector over his wife. God is the protector. And the wife now, she would relish in that love, in that adoration, and she will give of herself, of her love, and of the commitment to the marriage vows.
I just want to shift a bit, and but going back to the text that was read to you by Brother Rock, where it said that God made man and woman. And having read the book of Songs of Solomon, I see here that there is, the book of Solomon is really a man, as it were, praising the beauty of his spouse, and vice versa, the woman praising the, well, you don't call it beauty of a man, or whatever, of a man. And Solomon didn't seem to understand that there would be situations in this world today where men would begin to praise men and women would begin to praise women. And I think we need to make this point very clear, that there was no provision at the beginning when God made man and made woman. And there was no provision when Solomon was writing this song about any sex other than sex between man and woman, or woman and man. But now we are living in an age where we've seen so many changes, and the world is kind of changing as if to suggest that God has changed. And when you go back, for instance, to the book of Leviticus, now some people say that if it is not in the New Testament, we don't want to hear it. But we believe that the entire Bible has been given, as somebody made earlier, has been given by inspiration of God, and that goes for all Scripture, and therefore we include both the Old Testament and the New Testament. And if we go back, for instance, to the book of Leviticus, and I just read a couple of verses here for you. And I'm reading verse 13, and it says here, if a man has sexual relations with his daughter-in-law, if a man has sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman, both of them have done what is detestable. They are to be put to death. Their blood will be on their own heads. And it goes on to speak if a man marries his mother or his sister-in-law, and those kind of things. And we're now at an age where I read recently where a mother of a homosexual son who's in a homosexual marriage has decided to have a child for her son. It was not a natural physical act, but the point is that the sperm came from her son, and she bore this child for the couple, and she believes that she's doing what is right. But if God doesn't change, and all of these things were prohibited, from the very beginning, and now we are into all sorts of strange things, then it is clear that we have deviated from what God had planned for mankind at the very beginning. In the very beginning, we are told it was made a man, a woman, and now we are into animals and all sorts of things, and we are really straying far from the plan that God had for us. Yes, Mohan.
And he reached the conclusion that all is vanity. So is marriage vanity?
I was saying he's feeling loud.
I believe that from Bible standard, when we look at Adam and Eve, God would have provided, one woman for Adam, all right? God would have provided one man for Eve, all right? And we see in Solomon's case, the point where Solomon would have deviated from that plan, and that is not ideal for God. We would have seen David. David had so much children that from different women, I get the impression David didn't know some of the name. All right, that is not ideal. Jacob had 2 wives, and then the wives turned around and gave him to give him the handmaidens, and they had children. That had mayhem and chaos in the family circle. That is not ideal for the human, even after the fall. We would have also recognized that marriage would have been perverted by sin. I was looking through some WhatsApp from a group I was in, and the gentleman sent me this thing. The whole thing about sex and sexuality is total chaos in 2019. You have the gay, you have bisexual, you have asexual, you have gender fluid. What's gender fluid? You have pansexual, genderqueer, transgender, non-binary. Any non-binaries in here? You have bear, B-E-A-R, all right? Lipstick lesbian, straight alley, polysexual, transsexual, autosexual, polyamorous, lithsexual, trigender, demisexual. So, this thing is in total chaos, and clearly we can see that this is the design of Satan to frustrate God's plan and to put the human family into total chaos. All right? Now, God has set about his rules as to maintain the race. So if you have two women together, 2 men together, at some point in time, the race will die off. All right? Now, when we look at history, we recognize that the Greeks would have they didn't start it, but they would have placed in their army 2 lovers together, 2 men. So one man will fight for your lover. All right, so he don't want his lover to get killed. He will fight bad so that his lover wouldn't die. But as we said before, this is not the ideal. It also means that the family has failed. Ideally, religion should be taught in the home. The scenes that children see playing out with their parents should give them confidence to tell one another, well, I love you. All right? But we realize that in this particular culture of ours, even to go and give your son a hug now, well, if I go and give Ryan a hug now, he will feel shame. He feel shame. All right? So, at home, one should be, saying loving things to their spouses. And this is exactly what would have happened here with the wife and Solomon. All right? And God expects that as human beings, as social beings, we have certain needs, and that this topic about sex should be taught by the parents to the children, as opposed to let them say on the internet. In my day, it wasn't the internet, but when I go to school and fellas had certain books, you would peep in the book. All right? But today, our children have unrestrained access to pornography, to all types of sites. We should not leave it up to those, vile persons to teach our children. We should be teaching our children.
Yeah, I believe that when we study the Word of God, that we are studying to understand God's will and God's purpose for us, and to be educated. Because Jeffrey asked a question about Solomon and his wives and all such things. That may be the case, yes, but that does not mean that it is right or that God approves of it. This study is for us to understand how God view marriage, because when he made the first couple, he put them together in a marriage relationship. And that marriage relationship was to help us to understand how God deals with us now as a body, as a church, that same intimacy. So we can't look at all these different things that come along, and we have to put these aside and look at the original plan of God and follow that. Because sometimes we get distracted or sidetracked by these things, and then we say, well, so and so, this by doing, or this is the case. That is not the case. It is what God's will, what God's purpose, and what God's desire for us is where we should be doing.
Yeah, I think we're in a good time, though. Okay. I think what I want to conclude with here is this, is that now obviously, we would not have followed the plan of God. I don't think none of us can say that we followed the plan of God. But I just want to read this for you. It says that God forgives those who repent of sin. The gospel enables individuals who formerly engage in promiscuity and sinful sexual activity to be part of the fellowship of believers. Because of the extent to which sin has altered sexuality and humanity, some may not be able to know full restoration in this aspect of human experience. Some, for example, might choose a life of celibacy rather than get involved in any sexual relationships that are forbidden by God's word. So, I think it's a fitting climax because, as I said earlier, when we looked at what was the original plan for God, mankind has fallen away from it and so on. But that does not mean that we're lost, because God is willing to forgive us irrespective of whatever sin we may have committed. And that is, I think that's the redeeming quality of this lesson this week, is that whatever went on in our lives, whether other people knew about it or not, the point is that God knew about it. And if we are aware of the fact that we were doing wrong, what we've done wrong, then we have the facility to ask God to forgive us for that sin, whatever that sin may be or may have been. And the Bible says that He's willing to forgive us as long as we ask for forgiveness.
Yeah, in closing, I would like to say that, as what Thursday's assignment says, Scripture disapproves of all that alters or destroys God's image in mankind. And so God has set certain measures in place to safeguard the race. He has also given us, and especially young people, the opportunity to be a wall as opposed to be a gate door. All right? The Shulamite's brothers were wondering, she's a virgin now. And she boldly told him, I am a virgin. I am a wall. I'm not a gate door that everybody could push through. For those of us who, those of my contemporaries, all of us know the gate door. When you move the gate door, everybody's know. All right? But as young people, you want to be a wall, in spite of what others might say. But as I mentioned before, God disapproves of anything that will destroy the human race. Yeah, time is running out.
wrong really to lust after your wife? And that he would have been. If it's wrong to lust after your wife, because they don't lust in the sin. But when you sit down, you plan for her, you lusting after her legs, her breasts, and so on. Is that a sin, or was he not lusting? I just want to have that clear.
The Shulamite was also fantasizing about her spouse also, all right? So in the whole atmosphere of marriage, you know, we can't put any, no, I shouldn't say that, no restrictions, but there are certain things that we have to understand that will come about if you are in a relationship with your wife. If you have a sexual relationship with your wife, obviously sexual thoughts will come into your mind.
So those thoughts are not lust?
No. And I would like to, you know, as we said before, we're closing off now. It is 10:30. If you choose to say he lusts after his wife, well, it's up to you. All right? But it's admiration. Yeah. So thank you very much.
He was admiring her and so helping us to understand that there is nothing embarrassing about the human body. A husband and a wife ought to admire each other. And that is all the study is saying. So he admired whatever part of her body that he admired and she admired. It was admiration and that's why it said that there are some sexual taboos in some cultures. And then some children, because not being taught or learned certain things, they grow up with this kind of a hindrance to sex and to dealing with sex. But when we understand how God viewed the human body and loved and admired us in the marriage relationship, then that's no problem.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Participated for ably explaining to us our lesson study for this week. We will now have an item of special music presented to us by our dear sister Ray Bab.
Good morning, church.
Counselor, Comforter, Keeper, Spirit we long to embrace. You offer hope when our hearts have hopelessly lost our way. Oh, we've hopelessly lost the way. So Almighty infinite Father, faithfully loving your own. In our weakness you find us, falling before your throne. Oh, we're falling before your throne. You are the one that we praise. You are the one we adore. You give the healing and grace our hearts always hunger for. Oh, our hearts always hunger for. You are the one that we praise. You are the one we adore. You give the healing and grace our hearts always hunger for. Oh, our hearts always hunger for.
We want to thank Sister Ray for her special rendition. The fifth commandment of the law of God begins with the word honor. What does this word really mean? The Bible interprets itself and says, praise highly, to revere and to obey. This word indicates that we respect, value, care for, and accept the authority of our parents. Ephesians 6, verse 1, invites us to obey our parents because this is right. Obedience nurtures several character strengths: respect, humility, love, and wisdom. The easier it is for us to obey our parents cheerfully and willingly, the easier it will be for us to obey God. This commandment has an interesting promise. God recognizes the reward and rewards children who fulfill the commandment by idealizing the purpose that is behind it, which establishes the relationship of acceptance, respect, love, and forgiveness that should exist with our closest fellow human beings. I would now like to welcome all the visitors in our midst. I'm saying one or two names here that if I have not pronounced them correct, you know who you are. And as I call your name, please feel free to stand, that you'll be welcomed by all. And I would like all those sitting close to them to welcome our visitor. We have the Simon family from Christchurch, Silver Hill SDA Church. Welcome. I hope you enjoy your stay with us. Vander Johnson from the Family Church. Welcome. Mavis Yearers from Pike Corner. Welcome. Deborah Boyce from The Risk. Kathy Johnson from Pike Corner. Marion Boyce. Is Kathy and Hannah from the Christ, the Answer Family Church. Okay, welcome. We have Harriet Ben, Cheryl Paris, and Ruth Charles. We have Janelle Lawrence from Dominica. This one is Phyllis Leslie and Phileas, Abner, Zariel, and Leslie from Kingsland. I think they're both all from Dominic as well. We welcome you all. We have, is this Carlos Eiffel from Daitry Hill? And we also have Gabrielle, Joy, Faith, and Monique. They are all from the Merlin Quarter SDA Church. We welcome you all. Rosita Phillips from St. Michael. Welcome. We have Salvin Steele, and I think you see another name on the here that I don't think, but you know who you are, and you're from the Bible Way Church. Okay, Althea Yearwood from New York. Welcome. Are there any visitors who I have failed to mention? If there are any, welcome. Anyhow, you know who you are. Welcome to KFL once more again. And you are, I won't classify you as a visitor. You are here on a regular basis. If there are any others, we want to welcome all of you once again, and also our regular members. And we hope you enjoy the rest of the stay with us. Our closing hymn is number 518. Number 518. Standing on the promises of God. Oh, yeah. While this hymn is being sung, we will collect the Sabbath school offering. Standing on the promises of Christ my King, through eternal ages let his praises ring. Glory in the highest I will shout and sing, standing on the promises of God. Standing, standing, standing on the promises of God my Savior. Standing, standing, I'm standing on the promises of God. Standing on the promises I cannot fail, when the howling storms of doubt and fear assail. By the living word of God I shall prevail, standing on the promises of God. Standing, standing, standing on the promises of God, my Savior. Standing, standing, I am standing on the promises of God. Standing on the promises of Christ alone, be my love strong core. Standing on the promises of God, my Savior. Standing, standing, I am standing on the promises of God. We will now have our closing prayer by Sister Cynthia Yearwood.
All eyes closed and heads bowed. Almighty and merciful Father, I come before this morning giving you all the praise and thanks. I'd like to thank you, Father, for sending your Son, Jesus, into this world to save us all from our sins. And I ask you now to cleanse us all from our sins
and renew a right spirit within us. I want to thank you, Lord, for this holy Sabbath day, a day in which you created for us, which we could come and worship you in spirit and in truth. And I ask you now to bless all the families represented here today, those from our community, our visiting friends, and our church families. Bless each and every one of them. Also be mindful that as we celebrate Child's Month, I ask you, Lord, to continue to bless all the children. Continue to give them wisdom, knowledge, and understanding from on high. But I pray that these children be mindful that they need to obey your commandment where it says, honor their parents. I pray that they would respect them and be obedient to them, and also be obedient to other persons placed in authority over them. I also ask you to bless the parents, because continue to give the parents the strength, the energy, the wisdom, and knowledge in how to bring up these children in the right way, so it be pleasing to you, God. And if they honor and obey, if the children honor and obey you, they are short of a long and lasting life. I also now ask you to be with the speaker of the hour as he delivers a message to us. I pray that you will tune our hearts to receive this message. And we pray that we will not keep what we hear here to ourselves, but we will go out and share with others. Tell others of your love and your tender mercies towards each and every one of us. So I ask you now that everything that is said and done here, that would bring honor and glory to your name. Father, this is my prayer, and I ask all of these mercies in your precious name. Amen.
Sabbath school has now come to an end, and I want to thank everyone for participating and pray that we all will have a heavenly sitting at the feet of Jesus.
Pleasant Sabbath, everyone. Let's start this morning's inspiration with use of number 12. That's number 12. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee. Hail thee as the sun above. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness. Drive the dark of doubt away. Giver of immortal gladness, fill us with the light of day. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee. thee as the sun above. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the dark of doubt away. Giver of immortal gladness, fill us with the light of day. All the words of joy surround thee. All thy works with joy surround the earth and heaven reflect thy rays. Stars and angels sing around thee, center of unbroken praise. Field and forest, vale and mountain, blossoming meadow, flashing sea, chanting bird and flowing fountain, call us to rejoice in thee. Thou art giving and forgiving, ever blessing, ever blessed, wellspring of the joy of living, ocean depth of happiness. Thou the Father, Christ our brother, all who live in love are thanked. Teach us how to love each other, the joy divine. Let's now turn to number 21. That's 21, Immortal, Invisible, God Only Wise. Immortal, invisible, God only wise, in light inaccessible, hid from our eyes. Most blessed, most glorious, the Ancient of Days, Almighty, victorious, thy great name we praise. Unresting eyes, not silent as night. Unresting, unhasting, and silent as light, nor wanting, nor wasting, thou rulest in might. Thy justice like mountains, high soaring above, thy clouds which are fountains of goodness and love. To all life thou givest, to both great and small. In all life thou livest, the true life of all. We blossom and flourish like leaves on a tree, then wither and perish, but not changeth thee. Great Father of glory, pure Father of light, thy angels all filling the sight, all would render, all help us to see, 'tis only the splendor of light shineth thee. Another beautiful song that speaks about the love of Christ for us. That's number 183. Number 183, I will sing of Jesus' love, sing of him who first loved me, for he left bright worlds above and died on Calvary. One, 183. will sing of Jesus' love, sing of him who first loved me, for he left bright worlds above and died on Calvary. So I will sing of Jesus' love, endless praise my heart shall give. He has died that I might live. I will sing his love to me. Oh, the depths of love divine. Oh, the depths of love divine. Earth or heaven can never know how that sins as dark as mine can be made as white as snow. So I will sing of Jesus' love, endless praise my heart shall give. He has died that I might live. I will sing his love to me. Nothing good for him I've done. Nothing good for him I've done. How could he such love bestowed? Love, my heart is one. Help me now, my love to show. So I will sing of Jesus' love, endless praise my heart shall give. He has done that I might live. I will sing his love to me. Number 198, number 198, and can it be that I should get an interest in the Savior's blood? Died he for me who caused his pain for me, whom him to death pursued. Number 198. And can it be that I should an interest in the sick? For me, who him to death pursued. How can it be that God should die for me? Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? Let's now turn to number 73, Holy, 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 as we prepare for the entrance of the platform personnel. That's number 73. Can you stand? Holy, holy, the morning the sun shall rise to thee. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty
God in three persons, blessed Trinity.
Can you be seated?
Good morning, everyone. Pleasant Sabbath to all of you. First of all, let me welcome all of you to our community yesterday. We would like to welcome all of our regular members and all of our visiting friends. We are glad that you would have accepted the invitation to be here with us, to fellowship with us. And I hope that as we go through this service, that God's Holy Spirit will dwell in each and every one of us, our hearts. This is our announcements time. Now this afternoon at 4 p.m., we will come back here. We will come to be arranged to go into the district to do some field work. This is in preparation for the Good News Ministries Gospel Explosion, which is starting on the 19th of May 2011. That is next Sunday night. And by extension, I would like to welcome all, I would like to send out the invitation to all of our visiting friends to be part of this exercise on the 19th of May 2019. Now, there will be a personal ministries meeting, committee meeting, tomorrow at 6 p.m. So we won't have our regular Sunday night service. We will have personal ministries committee meeting. Please don't forget our Wednesday night prayer service. Our prayer service starts at 7:30 p.m. Our Bible study starts at 7:30 p.m. also on Friday night. And to all church board members, on Tuesday night, there will be church board, that is the 21st of May. We will have our church board meeting. This church board meeting starts at 7:30 p.m. We are hoping that all of our church board members make a very special effort to be early so that we can leave early. Last week, I would have announced that there are applications for the vacant posts, the vacant positions of principal and teacher at the Bridgetown Seventh-day Adventist Primary School. And this is for the years 2019-2020. Also, registration for the Early Childhood Center of the Bridgetown Seventh-day Adventist Primary School for the years 2019-2020. This is open for those children who are between the ages of 3 to 4. Also, students who are older than 4 years old, there's registration for the Bridgetown Primary School. We still have the sick in our midst. Please remember to call them or to give them a visit. We have Sister Johnson, we have Sister Ruth, we have Brother and Sister Ronk. We also have Brother Barry. I know that there are at least 2 persons who would have celebrated birthdays during the week, even though you are not a member of the KFL Seventh-day Adventist Church. Have any one of you celebrated a birthday during this week? We have Brother Stellan Bab and Sister Antoinette Rock. They would have celebrated birthdays this week, and we will sing the happy birthday song for them. Please stand. And Sister Antoinette Rock is on the outside. Yeah, she's by the door. Pardon?
The boy in the door there, even though big son has a son.
Okay. All right, let us all sing. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. May the good Lord bless you. May the good Lord bless you. May the good Lord bless you. Happy birthday to you. These are all the announcements for today. Thank you.
Call to worship. Give thanks unto the Lord, call upon his name, make known his deeds among the people. Sing unto him, sing psalms unto him, talk ye of all his wondrous works.
Our Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for your presence here today and for the abundant blessings that we have been receiving in Jesus' name.
How cheering is the Christian soul while toiling here below. It buoys us up while passing through this wilderness of woe. Brothers, sisters, and visiting friends, it is indeed a pleasure to be in the house of the Lord on this holy Sabbath day. We know that daily we face many toils which can cause us to go into states of depression, which will cause us to go into states of stress. But we have a hope. Our hope is in the Lord Christ Jesus, and through this hope, we can overcome these toils that we meet each day. Now, I want all those persons who are visiting with us to raise their hands. Give me a wave. If you're visiting with us, give me a wave. I want those members to look out for those persons who were waving. Keep waving because I'm still waving. So keep waving. And I want you to turn to those persons and warmly welcome them to our service. We want to especially welcome those who are visiting from our community. We thank you for taking your time out of your usual Sabbath Saturday schedule to come and celebrate the Sabbath with us. We also want to thank those who are coming from our sister churches. We are glad that you thought of us and that you decided to come as well. Let us continue our worship by singing hymn number 334. Come thou fount of every blessing, to my heart to sing thy praise.
thy fountain. Through thy heart to sing thy praise. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me ever to adore thee. May I still thy goodness prove, while the hope of endless glory fills my heart with joy and love. Hear us raise my Ebenezer, hither by the help of come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He's to rescue me from danger, interposed his precious blood. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be, like thy goodness, like a fetter, bind me closer still to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for the course above.
Let us turn in our Bibles to Genesis chapter 2, and we will be reading verses 18 to 20. Genesis chapter 2, verses 18 to 20. Gentlemen will read verse 18. Ladies will read verse 19, and we will all read verse 20 together. Gentlemen, begin. Ladies, and out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam to see what he. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. Gentlemen, join us. And Adam gave names to all cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found an helpmeet for him. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading and the readers of his holy word.
It is time for our intercessory prayer. We will turn to number 477, Camille Disconsolate. We sing the first verse. While we are saying the first verse, those of you who are in need of special prayer, you can come to the front while we're saying the first stanzas of this hymn. Number 477. Come, ye disconsolate, where ye languish, come to the mercy seat, fervently kneel. Hear Elohim. Let us reverently kneel for prayer. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for bringing us here another Sabbath day whereby we can worship you in spirit and in truth. We thank you that you have given us the opportunity whereby we can toil for 6 days and come and rest a while, because you have commanded us to come and rest a while. As we bow in your presence, dear Father, we know that you are a God of love, you're a God of mercy. You've provided us with traveling mercies through this week. You've strengthened us. And dear Father, we thank you very much for what you have done. Father, we also ask that you will cleanse us from all of our sins. We have sinned by word, thought, and deed. And you would have come here to die so that each and every one of us can have life and can have it more abundantly. And so, I intercede in behalf of the congregation here this morning. Cleanse us from all sin. Cleanse us from all unfaithfulness. As we bow in your presence, I pray that you will clothe us with your righteousness. Father, we know that as we look around and we see things happening in Barbados and all over the world, our hearts will want to faint within us. But dear Father, you have told us that when we see these things happening, to look up, for your redemption draweth nigh. Father, we know from whatever is happening all over the world that your coming is soon and it is imminent, and you are coming for a prepared people. And Father, we want to let others know that there is a heaven to gain and that there is a hell to shun, that they of themselves individually, they must make that commitment to follow after you, so that when time shall be no more, when you come in the azure skies, they will look up to you as a smiling king and not as a frowning judge. As we are here today, I pray that you will come divinely close to us. Send your guardian angels who excel in strength to protect us from all harm and danger. We also pray for other congregations around Barbados and around the world who are worshiping you in spirit and in truth. We know that your Holy Spirit will touch every individual church and every individual person. May you give us hearts of flesh so that we can easily discern your Holy Spirit. I pray in a very special way for our manservant, Brother Simon. You have used him in the past and continue to use him today as he should speak to us. May the words that he speaks strike deep down into our hearts. Help him to not to speak his own words, but to speak those words which you have selected for us. I pray for our visitors, our visiting friends. Continue to bless them. Continue to guide them. We thank you for the fact that they would have accepted the invitation to be here. I pray that they will never be the same again. Bless us and continue to guide us. And as we go through the remainder of this day, may your Holy Spirit be ever near us. Bless us as we continue on our service. May everything be done with a measure of decency and order. Continue to guide us. Continue to guard us. For Christ's sake. Amen.
We shall now worship the Lord with our gifts. I have shewn you all things, how that so labor ye ought to support the weak, and to remember the words of the Lord Jesus, how he said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. This is taken from Acts 20:35. The deacons will now wait on us for tithes, offering, and gifts. All eyes closed. Our Father which art in heaven, we thank you once again, dear Lord, for your privilege. We thank you, dear Lord, for allowing us, dear Lord, that we can come and worship and fellowship one with another. We thank you, dear Lord, for this week. We thank you for health and strength. We thank you, dear Lord, that we are able to bring back thy tithes and offerings, dear Lord. Bless them, dear Heavenly Father. Bless the hands that have to give. For Christ's sake, amen.
Can anyone tell me, okay, this is the month of May, but the month of May is also celebrated as another special month. Who can tell me what is the special month of May usually called? Yes, it is called Child Month. And today, while we are not celebrating children, we are celebrating those who have begotten them. It is only fitting that we start the month by celebrating the fathers and the mothers. Parents, you picked me up so many times when I was just a child. You dried my tears when I was sad. You held me by your side. You tried to teach me right from wrong, although I didn't know. Punishment hurt you twice as much, a feeling you couldn't show. You tried to make me go to school, to do my very best. You wanted me to see the good and shelter me from the rest. So many times I hurt you. With cruel words I'd say. You knew I didn't mean them, and you loved me anyway. Now, as I am older and I look back in time, I owe you for my success because you kept me so fine. If I had the choice to change my life and change my family, I wouldn't change a single thing because the best parents belong to me. At this time, we're going to have special presentation to our parents.
Good morning, church. Good morning to our visiting friends, and a special good morning to all of you who are mothers and fathers. Today is your special day, and this is celebration time. Now, today's world is flooded with programs where a search is on for models, singers, footballers, fashion designers, dancers. We have things like America's Got Talent, The Voice, Rising Stars, Caribbean Model Search. Today we are conducting our own search in this church. Right here at the Capefield Seventh-day Adventist Church today, we are having an on-the-spot parent search. Somewhere in this congregation sits a parent that we are looking for. Sits various parents that we are looking for. We're going to call our search today the parent fugitive. The parent fugitive is among you. This is how it works. I am going to provide you with some criteria, and if you think you know a parent who is here in the congregation sitting, who fits the bill, who fits the description based on the criteria, you will submit that parent's name by raising your hand, and when asked, you will stand and identify the parent, along with presenting whatever evidence is needed to show that that parent meets the criteria. But the most important thing, the parent we are searching for must be present right now in the congregation. So I will give you the criteria. You are to find the fugitive. Are you ready? Good. All right, before we do that, just a challenge to us all as parents. There's a well-known Bible verse. It's found in the 127th Psalm. Verse 3 of it says, "Lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward." Verse 5 of that same chapter says, "Happy is the man that hath his quiver full." Those two verses are pretty well known. We repeat them pretty often. And we hardly ever notice the verse that sits between those two. This is the verse that says, "As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are the children of the youth." So arrows. Our children are like arrows in our hands. And that makes us mighty or powerful because we shape the world by where we aim our arrows. So parents, we need to pray. We need to be prayerful, we need to be skillful, and aim our arrows at the right targets. So you select the correct target and you aim your arrow. It's going to be quality time that you're spending developing this arrow so that when you release that arrow, finally, the arrow hits the mark. Miscalculation can cause the arrow to miss the mark. So let us spend time developing our arrows and pray that when they are released, they having caught the vision, will latch onto that vision and fly towards the target. Out of that verse, we are going to have our first criteria. This is the quiverful concept. We are using it in the sense of counting, because I know you can say a quiver can be full if it has one, and a quiver might be full if it has two. It depends on the size of the quiver. But we are using it in terms of number and counting. So The parent today, present in our midst, who has the fullest quiver. The parent in our midst today, who has the fullest quiver. The search is on. Do you know such a parent sitting in our midst? Your hand can be raised and you can submit the name of that parent. No, the children do not have to be present, but what you can do is call the names of those children when you are. I see a hand. The parent with the fullest quiver. Yes, yes, Auntie Celia. Would you like to join me up here? Oh, no? Bring the microphone to you. Yes. Anybody here present today has more than 8 children? The parent has to be here. The parent with the 8 children or more. So, yes, Beverly? I guess that's why Celia is asking that question. So we have one going for 8 arrows in the quiver. So this one, is going to the mother of Sister Celia. Yeah, she's right here. And the children are Haskell. So that's our fullest quiver. Now our next criteria, this person has to be a visitor, cannot be a member of the church. The father or mother present, who is from the community, not a member of this church, and has been parenting for the longest time. The longest parenting parent from the community. Yearwood? How long is this we're speaking of? 50 years? 50 odd? $65? We want to do a similar thing for the parent from our church. The parent from our church who's been parenting for the longest time. Sister Winnie? Any challengers to Sister Winnie? Parenting for the longest time, so your child, the age of your child is important here. And the person, yes, the person must be present. Thank you very much. So we are settled? We are settled. Okay. Sister Winnie Fred. This next one is the community as well. And now this is the person parenting for the shortest time. From the community. From the community Parenting for the shortest time. Born yesterday and the parent is here, fine. Visitor here, parenting for the shortest time. 1 day, a few hours, 2 weeks, a month, 1 year old. We have a visitor here? How? Yes, and the baby is here. We have the evidence. Yeah. All right, so that's our visitor. And we have the same thing from the church. So a member of our church, parenting for the shortest time, I'm present here right now. Any challengers to Sister Takia? As who? Okay, we're having a challenge. Parent from the church, parenting for the shortest time. And present here in the end. Pardon me? Parenting for the shortest time. So the last child that you had and the... Which one? We have Brother Lomer in the audience as well. Parent, we said parent, no, since it's not necessarily mother. Okay, so let's see. We have to go down now to moms. So, the first child. Yeah. Right. The parent here from the church who's been parenting for the shortest time. So your child is the youngest. No, you can have 6 children and your last child could now have been born, no? Oh yes, that's true, yes. Yes, so the first child, yes, parenting for the shortest time. So that, she has a baby already, yes. So that takes her out. Parenting for the shortest time. This is the shortest time this is the... Right, so Brother Loma already has a son, she already has a son. The long... Yeah, then we have Takia. So, Sister Takia. Okay, so that completes the special tokens that we have had. Now we're going to give the general audience of parents, of fathers and mothers, some special tokens. All children who are present, if your mother or father is present, we're going to ask you to please file to the front, receive a token, and present to your mother or father. From downstairs. I can call them up to that thing. So give. Yeah.
Both mother and father here, both for receiving. So
we'll announce that. So people will know.
If you're here and both your mother and your father is here, you receive a token for your mother and a token for your father.
Excuse me, if there are parents who are here whose children are not here, can you please stand? All right, thank you. Remain standing until someone comes to you. Then you may sit. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, to continue our service, okay, to continue our service this morning, we will now be favored with an item of special music by Sister Rehabab.
Time measured out my days. Life carried me along. In my soul I yearn to follow God, but me I'd never be so strong. I looked hard at this world to learn how heaven could be gained, just to end where I began, where human effort was all in vain, were it not for grace. I could tell you I'd be wandering down some pointless road to nowhere, with my salvation up to me. I know how that would go. The battles I would face, forever running, but losing the race, were it not for grace. So here is all my praise, expressed with all my heart, offered to a friend who took my place, and ran a course I could not start, and when he saw in full just how much his love would cost, he still went the final mile between me and heaven, so I would not be lost. Were it not for grace, I could tell you I'd be wandering down some pointless road to nowhere, with my salvation up to me. I know how that would go. The battles I would face, forever running, but losing the race, were it not for grace. Forever running, but losing the race,
Just one announcement to the congregation here at Cayfield. The treasurer would like to inform you that the TAMIS information has been uploaded and persons can now begin filing their income tax. All right, so the TAMIS information has been uploaded. Persons can now begin filing their income tax. The privilege is mine today to introduce our speaker. Our speaker is from the Silver Hill Seventh-day Adventist Church, Brother Simon. Now, Brother Simon has also brought along his family. As I call your name, please stand. We have Roxanne, Sunitos, and Sunisis. All right, Sunitos and Sunitis. The Simon children. All right, they are part of ASI 2000 Beyond. They have been with ASI Sunisis from 2016. I have known Brother Simon around 2016, and he has impressed me that he is a very ardent Bible student, and he is very passionate for the Lord. And so as we listen to his words, you can judge whether I have made the right statements. And so we ask Brother Simon to present the word to us here at Cayfield.
Thank you, Elder Rock. See, I'm very tall, so I have to make sure you have the right breath. We are very excited to be here today. See, when they were asking for the parent with the most children, I was telling Brother Rock that I can take his 2 and add to my 2 and pose a challenge. But I realized that I had a challenger. Now, when your pastor spoke with me, he emphasized the fact that the theme that you will be dealing with today is the question of parenthood, of course, not excluding parenting. Because in his mind, he wanted to deal with both sexes, male, female, mother, and father. He made it very difficult for me by restricting me in that narrow lane. But this morning, I can guarantee you that we are going to have a wonderful time together. I can guarantee you that. Because you look very expectant, I noticed that, having just received your gifts and what have you. So at least I looked at my thing, I noticed there are 2 sparklings, one is red grape and the other is white grape, and I love the red one. So at least I would imagine that in the box there is a little bottle of red grapes. Now let me tell you earlier on that some of the passages that I'm going to use may not readily fit into your perceptual experience. But as we go along, we will get familiar with them and we'll have, a grand time together. I will read to you what Ellie Taylor said. Ellie Taylor is the author of the book, Becoming Us. And this is his definition of parenthood. He writes, parenthood is the state of being a parent. It involves the role you are taking as a mother or father and as a co-parent with your partner. Parenthood entails changing identities, facing unrealistic expectations, taking care of yourself so that you can take care of others, and working together with your partner to navigate the journey of becoming a parent. The concept focuses on relationship with your partner, family and friends, colleagues, the community, and most importantly, yourself. So parenthood deals with a realm of the social environment. This is what he said about parenting. Parenting involves rearing a child. It includes the techniques, methods, and skills you use in raising your child.
learning how to bathe, feed, blah, 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 and what have you, and instilling values and discipline into your child. Those are the, what they call, the tools we use in parenting. So there is a slight difference. While one deals with the social environment, the other deals directly with the child. So in my discourse this morning, today rather, I am going to incorporate both concepts, okay? Let us pray. Heavenly Father, bless us today, we pray in Jesus' name. Now go into the book of Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2, and we are going to read verses 18 to 21. Genesis 2, 18 to 21. The Bible says what? We can read it together. And out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field, and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam to see what he could call them. And whatsoever Adam called them, every living creature, that was the name thereof. Now notice something here. God said it was not good that the man should be alone. And what is the next step we see? God brought before the man the animals. He placed him in a scientific journey. Because under Genesis 1, the Bible says God gave man dominion over the animal kingdom and the vegetable world. You realize that? Now, if the man must govern with any degree of understanding the lower creature, what must happen? He must understand their distinctive natures. Now, when you name something, what do? You first of all classify it, isn't that so? So we have donkeys and we have cows, cattle, right? Then we identify, this is a donkey, this is a cow. Then we also speak of stratification. We have the lion that is the king of the beasts, and then we come down on what have you, okay? Now, there is an element that we cannot miss in the question of naming. When you name a thing, you speak to the essence of the thing. Let me illustrate. If I said to you that at the door there is a cobra snake. Now church is over. Which exit would you take? Huh? Which exit would you take? Would you go through the door? Why not? Because a cobra snake is at the door. Now what that speaks to is the venomous nature of the snake. And you understand that if that snake strikes you, then in a few minutes or hour, you are dead. You see, by naming, you speak to the essence of the thing. So here is it. You are planning to become a parent. What do? You have to investigate. You have to align yourself with the people who have the requisite experience and the influence that will bring you into line with the responsibility of proper parenting. So you have to apply some degree of naming. If you want your child to be a thief, what would you do? Well, that may sound bad. But if you want your child to be somebody of repute, you will apply all the requisite principles of good child rearing so that the child can grow up in the fear of the Lord and in the direction that you want him or her to go. So naming is very important. Because God is preparing Adam for the greatest responsibility of his life, which we are going to see later on. So the Lord God brought before the man the animals to name them, because he was the one who would relate to them. He would know what makes the lion ticks, what makes the donkey, and I said it with, what makes the donkey bray. He will know what makes the lamb, to giggle and to jump about. Adam must understand the natures of the lower creatures that he must govern. It's like choosing a first elder for this church. No, you would not choose me, because I would not know left from right. I don't know your members. I don't know what the dispositions are. I don't know anything about them. So you will choose Brother Rock. Brother Rock, I'm not campaigning for you though. You choose somebody who has the understanding, the requisite tools and the right attitude to lead the church. So you are actually naming things. Notice what the Bible says, whatever name Adam gave to them, that was their name. In other words, Adam, you name them, therefore, it defines the way you relate to them. These are basic principles of life. If I'm walking up the road and I saw two men whom I do not know, and I imagine, you see, these fellas are going to rob me. What do you think I'm going to do? I will shun them, and if possible, I'm going to run. Because in my mind, these two men are robbers. So God brought the animals to the man to name them. That's why we give our children a name. Nowadays, people just call their children, give names to their children randomly. Her name is Rihanna because Rihanna is a movie star and this and that. When we name our children, we give their names according to what we want them to be. So we have Sunisis and we have Sonitas Badara. That's what we have. And as far as we are concerned, we are seeing that drift towards what we want them to be based on their names. When I go out, you can ask me what the names mean. So Adam gave names to the animals. So we have to have an understanding of the nature of the reality that we are getting into. That is crucial. Research has shown that 95% of parents within the first year of their first child, have serious problems because of lack of proper parenthood. There was no preparation. And this serves teaches you how to prepare for that kind of reality. Notice Genesis 2 and verse 15. Genesis 2 and verse 15. What does the Bible say? And the Lord God what? And the Lord God took the man and put him in the garden to what? To dress and to keep it. Now, what do you think that means? Let us apply the principles. What do you think, if you were to put that in today's language, in today's environment, how would we put that? Somebody talk to me. We are looking at the principle, not just the place. The Lord God took the man and placed him in the garden to what? To dress and to keep. What are we talking about? Huh? You're looking at parenthood and parenting. Notice the environment. God took the man and placed him in a particular environment conducive to his ability to govern the lower creatures. So the Lord chose the right community for the man. And as young parent, the environment, the community is very, very important. I noticed something in Barbados and Trinidad. I realized that there are certain places and there are certain behavior that are almost endemic to certain environment. I realized in Trinidad that in the place where you have these government units in some places, that environment produces particular behaviors. The young men and the young women from that area behave a certain way, and they think a certain way, and they act a certain way. And when you analyze the environment carefully, you notice that there are certain class of people that are attracted to such environment. I will not mention name in Barbados, but we have similar thing here. So the environment is important. You cannot take a child. You as parents cannot choose to live in an environment where the drug life is a common thing and expect your child to resist such temptation. Eventually, the child is going to mimic what he or she has been seeing over the years. And that is why parenthood includes the social environment. It is important that we choose the right environment. You know, when in this church, when I was a young Seventh-day Adventist, they would teach us all these things. You have to study the pedigree of the one you desire, to be with. You look at their parents, their grandparents, and what have you. You look at their genetic disposition as it relates to disease or sickness and all this kind of thing. All these kind of factors you take into consideration, because you know that when you get married to this girl or this young man, what you are married into is a family. And what affects the family up there is, to some degree, in that individual. You know what science is now discovering? The Bible says in Genesis 5 and verse 3, right? That Adam had a son in his own likeness and in his own image. Now, when that text is taken by itself, it simply means that Adam as a man got a child as a man. Scientists now discover, and they call it transgenerational eugenic mutation. They realize that certain disposition and genetic, what we call porn, are passed on from parents to children. So you find the boy is behaving just like the grandfather. The boy had the same attitude like his grandfather. And then you wonder, why? But no, I didn't teach him so. Where did he get it? I didn't tell him these things. I didn't send him to that school. But no, this boy is an alcoholic. But we have never had alcohol in our house. But as soon as the boy takes a drink, he becomes drunk. Where has he gotten from? When you trace the family tree, you realize that somewhere up there, his grandfather or great-grandfather was an alcoholic. So the boy was born with a disposition. So as soon as he takes a drink, because he had the propensity. And so it is important that we take these factors into consideration when you are forming relationship. Especially for young people. People like me already passed that road. So when you are going to date, court, and what have you, consider these factors. Not be tall and handsome like me. That's not a criterion for marrying a person. You have to look a whole wall of things into consideration, because after marriage, what you have is the raw person. One of the problems you have in Barbados is this. There are people who have been married for years. Now the children are grown and left, they can't live together. Because when they married early, what they married to was a profession. He was a police. He was a doctor, she was a nurse, and whatever. So they married to their profession. So they never forged any serious relationship. They were just together for the children. But now the children are gone. All things goes haywire. So it is important, very important, that when you are choosing, when you are considering these things, you know exactly what you are getting into. You must name things. You must choose the right community, the right environment. That's why God said that the Lord took the man and he placed him into the garden. Now that doesn't say that initially the environment may be favorable, but God may be shaping you for something great in the future as he did to Joseph. But you must have the right attitude. Remember what Joseph said? I was wondering last week, what would have kept Joseph during all those adverse ordeals? But he said it to his brothers. He said, you meant evil, but God sent me to preserve your life. Joseph knew somewhere deep within him that during those years of adversity, God had designed it to be so. Sometimes the environment may not be favorable initially, but God is preparing you for something greater. The point I'm making is this, is that in everything, you've got to be faithful to God. So the environment is key. Hear what the Bible says. Genesis 2, the same verse we read, right? The Bible says down the road that God put the man to sleep, and he made a woman, and then he presented the woman to the man. But it means that he dangled her before him, and he chose her, right? And Adam said, what? This is now what? Bone of my bone. You know what those words mean? This is now. In other words, it speaks to the fact that prior to this experience, he was searching for somebody like unto himself. And what God did was to materialize his desire. In other words, God gave Adam what he was desiring. What am I saying? Some of us are in a relationship. Some of us have formed relationship. And we are now in trouble. And what we are doing, we are blaming others for the problems that we are facing. But in reality, what we are having is what we desired. Because people are drawn to things that they desire. It is nobody's fault. It is your choosing. Let me tell you what I mean. Now, you are a member of this church. You have the elders, you have the ladies and what have you to guide in a particular direction. But you are stubborn and you are rebellious, and then you go and you throw somebody outside of the range of Christianity, expecting that that person would conform to your expectations and desires. So you get married per se. But then the person is not changing. And you're having problems. And then you come to the poor pastor and want him to remedy it. You come to the elders and your children are given problem. The man, the woman is given problem. And we cannot rest. Because all we hear is that you are having problems. But really and truly, what you are having is the fulfillment of that which you desired. And only God can really deal with that. Only God. Because the Bible says that the way of the Lord is right. So Adam got what he desired. And notice something. Notice how human sexuality is defined. Adam said, this is now what? Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called a woman because she is taken from man. I make this point. Any man, any woman, any dog, any cow that desires sexually anything outside of its kind has become demon possessed. It is unnatural for man to desire another man. God did not make you so. It is unnatural. It is unnatural for a woman to see another woman and desire her sexually. Whenever that happens, there is a distortion of the mind and the nature. And that is why we're having so much problem today. I was looking at a documentary some night ago. And the scene was in Australia, these two young ladies. They were living together. And this girl, 16, living with her parents, said, you know what, I am old now, so I want to go on my own. And she went and she lived with the two girls. The two young ladies were lesbians. So when this other girl got into the home, the relationship, one of the ladies became very close to her. Now, really and truly, from the documentary, these two girls were practicing what I call vampirism. They would cut each other, they would drink the blood, and they would carry on their sexual activities, right? So this other girl came in, and she became close to one of them, and the other partner got jealous. And for the one that the girl has become close to show her loyalty to the jealous one, she killed the 16-year-old. And having killed her, both of them drank her blood and performed their sexual behavior. Now, when you see that kind of thing, that is unnatural, isn't it? It is unnatural. It is disturbing that two ladies can behave like that. You see that in movie, but in real life you will not imagine it, but it happened. God made us to desire the opposite sex in the context of which I speak. So don't take your children as good parents and put them in an environment where they will be prone or influenced to take on a certain lifestyle. I would not allow my children to really become good friends after they live like that. I will not sanction it, because I know the impact of that. You can do that if you want, but not me. The Bible says evil communication what? Corrupts good manners. That's a biblical principle. So you've got to understand yourself also. Remember the story of Abraham and Lot? Look at it. Genesis 13. Genesis 13, verses 8 to 10. Hear what the Bible says. And Abraham said what? Genesis 13, verses 8 to 10. And Abraham said unto Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, between thy herdsmen and mine. For we are brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate yourself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt keep the left, take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou wilt depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And the Bible says, and Lot what? Lifted up his eyes and saw, the garden, the Sodom and Gomorrah, how it was beautiful. Now, what is going on here? Now, the land belonged to whom? In this context. Whom does the land belong to? Abraham or Lot? Huh? Abraham, because God promised him the land. That's what the Bible says. Notice the attitude. Notice the attitude. What Abraham gave up was his right and privileges. He gave them to Lot. Lord, you choose. If you go right, then I'll go left. If you go left, then I'll go right. You notice sometime in relationship between mother and father, this concept, the lack of it creates serious problem. Am I speaking truth? The lack of the application of this attitude creates serious problem. If the man is right as far as he's concerned, then he must have it his way. Well, if the woman is right, it is worst. She must have it her way because she is right and she is not, that's a bit, biased though, and she would not give up her rights and privileges to please you. And some men are stubborn. Well, you are right. You want your privilege. I am not saying anything, but I'm not going to do what you want me to do. Therefore, you do what you want. I do what I want. You notice what is going on here? The problem is created because there is a lack of humility. But behind this is a deep conviction where Abraham understood that it is God who gave him the land. And God is his inheritance. That is what is going on here. So Abraham had no problem in giving Lot the choice. I would that, as parents, that we apply this principle in our relationship. It is not a matter of right and wrong. It's a matter of experience. I'm talking to the young couples. It's not who right or who wrong. It's a matter of experience. Would this decision, would this conclusion benefit us both? That is the question to consider. And if it benefits us both, then it doesn't matter whether you are right or I am wrong. Let us go for it. And this is the greatness of Abraham. The man gave up his rights and privilege to please another. But you know how the story ends with Lot? Bible says he looked up and he saw how beautiful the plain of Sodom, were with palm trees like Eden before Adam sinned. The Bible says he went until he got into Sodom, and you know what? He lost his wife, he lost his 2 daughters, and he lost his whole posterity. One of the most vexing nations to Israel were the Moabites. Because of Lot's choice, the consequences follow. So we have to be willing, to give up our rights and, our privileges. Genesis 12. This one is sweet. Not Genesis. Judges 12, 5 and 6. Judges 12, 5 and 6. Tell me what it says. And the Gileadites took the passage of Jordan between the Ephraimites. And it was so that when those Ephraimites which were escaped said, "Let us go over," that the men of Gilead said unto him, "Art thou an Ephraimite?" If he said, "Nay," then he said unto him, "Say now what? Shibboleth." And he said what? Shibboleth. Why? What is the principle there? Let me give you the context. And now the Gileadites, now Jephthah was the judge of the tribe of the Gileadites, or the clan rather, right? then they were close to the Ephraimites. So when Jephthah went to war and came back successful, the Ephraimites wanted to share in the spoil, right? And they blamed him for not taking them. It wasn't really true. He called them, so they didn't come. But there was a war between them. So there were some Ephraimites who wanted to have it war, mingle themselves with the Gileadites. But there was a test. Let us prove you. Say shipboleth. Because of the difference in the tongue, the dialect, they could not frame the first, syllable. So they said shipboleth. And what do you think happened? The men took them and killed them. Now, watch it. It is a principle I am now applying. You will notice here that the Ephraimites wanted to mingle with the Gileadites as a means of preserving their life. But the Gileadites know that if they get into the camp, they will undermine the system and cause their destruction. So the men were wise enough to apply a test. Let us see if you share the same dialect. I'll come to that earlier on. And so they failed. And what happened? Their life was taken. Let me deal with that. You remember at the Tower of Babel, the Bible starts by saying this, and the whole earth was of what? One language and one tongue. The language was the same. There was really no dialect. So there was no confusion with the words and the meaning. Now there are some Haitians that work with me. I now understand what happened at the Tower of Babel. You would say to them, bring this thing. And they would look at you and, well, what is he just said? And they would go and they would bring something completely different to what you said. And then you're wondering, but wait, but I just said to you, go and bring a piece of 2x4. And they will bring a length of steel. And I would say 2x4 wood. 2x4 wood. And they would bring the wrong thing. And then I would say to him, you got to think. Because I want to impress upon him. You got to study. You got to look at what I'm doing. Notice the language barrier is created not simply a communication problem, but a problem of organization. There is really no unity, because what we are building cannot be accomplished with somebody who doesn't understand what is required. So at the Tower of Babel, the principle was applied to maximum profit. It was one language, one tongue, one speech. And the Bible said that they said to each other, let us build. You know how it went? They said they had stone for mortar. It tells you of the science, the physics and the chemistry. These men understood exactly what they were doing. They already worked out the science of doing the thing. The Bible said they build and they reach up. They were so united, right? That the Bible said that when God looked on, God said this, that the people is one. He said there is no limit to what they can achieve. If they desire it, they can accomplish it. That is the power of the human mind. When this mind sets out to do something, nothing is impossible for it to accomplish. They said that when the first man said, right, I can't remember his name, that he can send messages without using letter, any telephone wires and whatever, they put him in prison. In fact, they took him for what you call a psychiatric evaluation. Because how in the world can you communicate messages just over the airwaves? You see, these men were beyond his time. When God used to say that the world was wrong, you know what they did to him? You know the story? They locked him up. So when the mind imagines something, it can accomplish it. So when you have somebody, right, who are thinking like you, who have the same goals and aspiration and disposition, right, there is nothing that you cannot accomplish together. The Ephraimites could not work together with the Gileadites because there was a language barrier. We must apply this principle in our relationship, not just as parents, but as children who are aspiring to become, good parents. I won't keep it too long. So they could not frame the word. So they say, sit bullet. When I just came back, I was working at the airport, and there was a guy named Corey. And Corey became my friend. But everything Corey said to me, I would smile and say yes. Because I didn't understand Corey. No, I did not. Corey, he had a little speech impediment. And with the Bajan dialect, then I was in utter confusion. So I said, well, that's how we became friends. Because I was always on his side. Whatever he said, I agreed with. And I would always smile. But what Corey did not know, that I did not understand what he was telling me. But I agreed with him. So sometimes you just need to accept things for what they are and make the best of them. We have to learn to take care of ourselves. I'm coming to a close. You know what God said to Adam? He said, Adam, I have given you all these things to eat. He said, notice they are pleasant to the eyes and good for food, you eat them. They are good for you. They tell me that the health bill in Barbados is extremely high. When we came Barbados, first, this is what perplexed me. I'm speaking to Barbadian. This is what perplexed me, right? I would catch the bus and go in town in the morning. And Brother Rock, what I would see is that a number of you in Jobs would gather at the shop. And you would buy a buster, you would buy a cake, and you would go along your way eating it for your breakfast. And I could not understand that. How is it that people in a place like this could have these things for their breakfast? I couldn't understand it. But Vincentian then, not that we are better than you, I suppose we didn't have the resources to buy buster and bread and toll, what have you. But you would never see that. Because this is what would happen. When you get up in the morning, you would make your breakfast, you would eat your breakfast, and you would hustle off to work. You would walk with your lunch. Rarely would you, Vincentian would not then buy food outside of home. So you would hardly do those things. But in Barbados, it was a common thing. I was in Sheffield one day, and I saw two ladies went and they bought what they had to buy. And I could not believe what these two ladies had on their plate. And they want my size. What am I saying? They tell me, I think it's St. Lucia, if not Barbados, is the #1 amputation center of the world. You think that is accidental? You think the doctors are saying, no matter I like him, let me cut off his leg? No, they are lifestyle behavior. And what happens as a result of that, you are putting a heavy load economically on the government. When it starts where? In your kitchen. We must learn to take care of ourselves. There is nothing, I would imagine, that is more burdensome to a husband or a wife than to have a husband that is sick or a wife that is sick. And when you chase it, it started where? In the home. So God said to Adam, Adam, these are things you shall eat because they are good for you. As good parents, we have to inculcate these principles in our children. That the days may be long, so we have to eat right. We must love God. Yes, we must love God. That is the basic principle that we have to apply in all that we do. God says in Deuteronomy that you must love me with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, and with all your strength. And then he adds, and your neighbor as yourself. You realize in Barbados we have lost that sense of humanity to some degree. We have lost the value for life. You on the Van der ZR and you listen to the music that these guys are playing. And if you say to them, well, I have done it several times, I cannot take that kind of music that you are playing. I will tell them so. You either leave me here or you turn it down. That is what I usually do. Well, I have the power because the money is in my pocket. That's what I do, and nobody can beat me. That's what I do. Because that kind of thing, gets to me. How could you be playing this kind of music in the hearing of other human beings and in the hearing of school children? Because what you are doing, you are shaping minds. You are coloring the destiny of this nation by the kind of music you are playing. You are defining how we should love each other. That's what you are doing. That's what you are doing. But the men don't understand this. So we forgive them. So God said, you've got to love me with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Solomon says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and don't lean upon your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he shall what? Direct your path. That is the divine counsel. That's what God said to Israel. He said, Israel, if you must grow and prosper as a nation, then these principles that I have, these statutes and judgments and laws that I have given to you, you are to keep. And the nation would know that you are not ordinary. You are not the head, you are not the tail, but the head. And that is the problem, as I close, with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. God has given this church all the requisite resources for a better people, a better nation, and a better church. But what do you have? We have brother not living good with brother. Sister not living good with sister. We have those among us who are poor and they are struggling greatly, and there are those among us who have to give and to spare, and there is no humanity, there is no yearning after the plight and needs of us who are in great distress. Yet we want the children of these people to be good boys and girls, to be good men and women, when we have the requisite resources that can make their lives better. Therefore, we are all guilty. And that is why parenthood speaks to the question of the social environment. What affects you affects me. What affects me affects everyone else. A child can only be reared by a community, not simply a mother and a father. God knows that. And so he said to Manoah, this child, or you, must not drink wine nor strong drink, because this child will be a Nazarene from his birth up to the church. Remember, if we want to be good parents, if we want to be good partners, we must understand the nature of the things that we are dealing with. We must also discover ourselves. When we've discovered ourselves, then we can manage anything. We must love God. We must take care of ourselves. We must be willing to give up our rights and our privilege for the good of the unit that be in the family. And let me implore you this morning that as Christians, we must find time to study the Word and apply it so that life can be better. I beg you, give proper names to the experiences of your life. Give proper names to those who are in your life. Give proper names to the place and environment. Give proper names to the things that affect you. And if you do that, you will have power over them. God bless you.
I think we certainly want to thank Elder Simon for the message, timely message that he would have presented this morning and this afternoon. So we wanted to thank him for coming and sharing the message with us. So at this time, we'll sing to close hymn number 441. 441. Now, for those who are visiting with us, at this time we also collect an offering called the Education Fund, which goes to assist persons in the church, young persons in the church who are pursuing their education at the STA school. So as we sing this hymn, we're going to collect that offering as well. Hymn number 441.
Still looking for the promised day, while many line of grief and care upon his brow was furrowed. There I asked, what brought his spirits up? Oh, they said, he the blessed hope. And one I saw with sword and shield, who boldly braved the world's cold frown, and fought unyielding on the field to win an everlasting crown. Though worn with toil, oppressed by foes, no murmur from his heart arose. I asked what brought his spirits up. Oh, this said he, the blessed hope.
And there was one who left behind the cherished friends of early years, an honor ledger with resigned to tread the path bedewed with tears. Through trials deep and conflicts core, yet still a smile of joy he wore. I asked what brought his fairest up. Oh, this said he, the blessed hope. While pilgrims here we journey on in this dark veil of sin and gloom, through tribulation, hate and scorn, or through the portals of the tomb, till our returning King shall come to take his exile baptism. Oh, what can boy the spirits of this alone the blessed hope.
Okay, just announced there will be lunch provided for the church and our visitors, so feel free to join us downstairs for lunch after we've done the benediction and so forth. So let's bow our heads for the benediction. Almighty and gracious Father, we want to thank you for the time spent here this morning. We want to thank you for the blessings that you bestowed upon us through your hymns, through your songs, through your manservant, and we want to thank you and give you all the thanks, the praise, and glory. We want to thank you for the offering collected. May it go to help those who has been collected to help, and may it be used to honor you and to bring boys and girls to your saving grace. So bless us as we go to our homes or we retreat downstairs, and may as we go through the door, may we be drawn even closer to you than when we first came in this morning. So bless us again, be with us to the end of this Sabbath day, is my prayer for Christ's sake. Amen.